Now let's look at adding titles to your project. You can get to titles by clicking here. You'll see titles and generators. We're just going to focus on titles right now. Let's expand this and we can see the categories here. So we can go to a specific category or we can just scroll through all the different kinds of titles. So let's start off with the most basic title called Basic Title, which is just a simple piece of text in the middle of the screen. You can select it and drag it into your project just like you can a regular clip. So that means there are two ways to add it. One is that you could add it on top of an existing video. So I can put it, say, right here on top and you can see the title appears over the video. The other is to add it as the main element here on the main timeline. If you do that, you're just going to get the text over a black background. However, for some titles this is going to be really useful. Let's go back to using the basic title here over the video just to see what we can do with it. So I'll click here just to position the white line in a place where I can clearly see the title. And you can see I could double click it right here inside the preview area and type something. But you can also edit what the text says by going to some of the properties here. You have a lot of different things in the properties when it comes to titles. So for instance, if I click here under text, I'll see publish parameters and there's nothing here for basic title, but in a minute we'll see other titles have things here. I can go here to the text properties and in this case for this title there's a box here for text where I can edit the text. You also see all the properties here for the text itself. So for instance I can change the font to something, change the style if there are more styles available for that font, increase the size. The alignment, left, right, or centered, is going to be relative to the dot here in the middle. So if I do left you can see how it jumps there so it's left justified. In most cases you can just leave this at center. Then you have other things like tracking and line spacing for multiple lines. You can use multiple lines for most text. So for instance here I have something and I'll just use return and something else on a second line. And you have various other properties here, but the most interesting ones are at the bottom. Here you've got face, outline, glow, and drop shadow. Notice face is checked. If I uncheck it the text disappears, of course. If I show I can see the color here. So I can change the color really easily. I can do a gradient fill instead of a color and then I can work with the gradient here. I can make it semi-transparent. I can even blur. And that's all here under face. But I could also go to something like outline, turn outline on and you can see it adds a red outline there. I can change the color, the width of the border there and do things with an outline. I can also do a glow and let's say change it to a red glow, blur, radius and do something like that and turn that off. And also there's a drop shadow which really comes in handy if you want to make text stand out from the background. So notice here if I were to go back to the beginning here how the text is kind of over some white. So without a drop shadow it blends in a little bit. With a drop shadow it stands out and of course I could add more of a drop shadow to it, blur it, set its distance, that kind of thing. So you can see even here with the simple basic title there's a lot that we could do to make it interesting. There's even 3D text. Check that and now the text has some 3D qualities to it. Now as you can see here there are a lot of different titles that you could choose from. And there are different types of titles too. Some of them are animated. So I'm going to go down here to sideways drift, bring that in. And this one has kind of a 3D effect like this. You can see how there's two pieces to it that drift in. So under parameters you can see there's built in and built out. You can change the fonts for line 1 and line 2 and set the size for each one of those and the color for each one of those. Let's go to a really dramatic one, splash ink. I'm just going to drag that here to the end. You can see it's got its own background. So if I actually were to put it over the video here it would cover it. Although not necessarily. If you go to the publish parameters I can turn off the background and then you could see what's behind it. But say if I wanted to use this as its own standalone thing you could see how detailed this is. So here I've got things for ink color. I could change it to some other color if I wanted to. I could change the font used. You can see the text only actually comes in here at the end. So I can change the text there and the font in the ink, the font not in the ink. You can see two different pieces there. So there's quite a bit going on here in this particular title. Other titles like speech bubbles here are definitely meant to be over video. You can see here it creates this little speech bubble. So in publish parameters here I can change things like the bubble size, change the outline color and the fill color so I can maybe get rid of the outline and just have it be like that. Now with something like speech bubbles you may want to move it around. So you can transform just like you can with regular clips. So let me click here to go to the transform tool. And with the transform tool turned on I could drag it around. And notice it's still full frame, right? It still shows me a whole 16:9 rectangle with this inside it, and in this case in the upper right hand corner. But it doesn't mean I can't move it down to the lower left hand corner like that if I need to position it there. And you can also go to the properties here and do other things with it. For instance here I can rotate it. So I can grab here and rotate it around. This works for any title. So let's get rid of this one for instance and go back to the basic title at the beginning. I can put that in and let's increase the size here to make it nice and big so we can see it. But you can see I can transform it. I can move it anywhere I want. So if I don't want something in the center I can use a basic title, set the font up exactly like I want, and then put it anywhere I want in here. I could even rotate it, do anything I want with it. So really the sky's the limit. If you just want to place text somewhere, just use a basic title, style it like you want, position it like you want, rotate it like you want, and set everything up just like you want. So these are all very highly customizable. Let's take a look at bold fin here, which is a really interesting one. If I were to put it over some video you can see it completely replaces it. So it's kind of meant to be on its own. But notice on its own it's got this area here that seems to want you to bring something into it. So if I go to the publish parameters you can see there's a media well. So I can click on that and you can see choose a clip that has the media. So I can go to another clip. Let's go back here for instance and select like this clip right here and then apply it. Now you can see there's a clip inside of that. That's really interesting and you can see how that's done, but it's not always like that. Let's delete that one and then go and look at another seemingly similar one. Under comic book there's these various ones like this one called slide. So I'm going to take this one and drop it over this video and look what happens when I do that. It actually takes the video and places it inside so the video underneath shows through. So this comic book slide one here works in a very different way than that previous one we looked at. So you really do need to place one of these in and then look through all the parameters and kind of figure out how it works. One more I want to show you is scrolling here because this is how you create traditional end credits. You can stick it here at the end and then you've got the scrolling credits thing here. If I go to the text area here you can see there's text. I can actually click and drag this down and increase the amount of space here. And I can set what these things are and create new ones, and put extra spaces between things. And see how that looks. I of course can change the font and do all sorts of different things with this. But if you wanted to create a long scrolling set of credits at the end really easily you can just use the scrolling titles here. If you want it to appear over some video you can certainly do that. You can just take this here and you can see the scrolling titles appear over some video. So you can have some video or a photo or something like that that's behind this instead of just having it appear over black like that. You can see some more that look good on credits by going to one of these categories here. If I click credits it's going to show me the ones that look best for that kind of thing. So here's like a trailer style credits. If I put this one here then this has a lot of different pieces of text that I could edit. So it's a little bit harder to navigate because there's so much text. I can go into here and there are even different styles for this particular one. Now all the different styles here may get you thinking that perhaps there's a way to create these, and there is, but it's not in Final Cut. You use Apple's Motion app, which you can get in the App Store, and it's very complex, but you can create your own titles in it And you can create all sorts of things including even transitions and effects and everything in Motion. So Motion is like the app that's used to create all of the tools that are then used in Final Cut Pro. And there are companies and individuals, of course, that have already created things. So if you want, you can actually search online for titles that you could download. Sometimes there's packs that you could purchase from third-party companies and add more things like titles and effects to Final Cut Pro.